Hello, adventurers. My name's Tyler.
And I'm Richard.
On today's episode, we find out once and for all which is superior, Daggerheart or Dungeons and Dragons. Welcome to True Strike.
Howdy, folks, and welcome back to the show.
Don't talk to him.
Why?
He's the enemy.
Because I have the better game.
Because your game sucks.
Because the game is better.
Today, Richard and I will both be portraying characters. Richard much more so than myself, because obviously everything I say about Daggerheart is true, and everything he says about Dungeons and Dragons is probably a lie.
Who said this was a character?
Yeah, like he said, we will be discussing these books.
Yeah. We want to compare them book to book. Well, books to book.
Yeah, so we're looking at the 2024 5th edition core rulebook adjustment certification milestone accomplishment of Dungeons & Dragons updated D&D 1 5th edition.
I think the first thing, I'm gonna jump off right here.
Yeah, feel free.
I'm gonna start the ball rolling.
Well, let me finish my thing. 2, Daggerheart 1.0, where they got it right first try. Go ahead.
So here's the thing. You got it right the first try. This Dungeons & Dragons has been cooking for years.
Yeah, 50.
Cooking for years.
And they never got it right.
The thing that
right?
we need to point out here, and one of the biggest things here, is that I am advocating for 3 books versus 1 singular book.
Easy. Yeah.
And that must be pointed out because there's only 1 book over here, which very greatly limits the amount of information that can be contained in that book. Mm-hmm. And I think that is my very first jumping off point and argument here is there is a lot more material when it comes to Dungeons and Dragons.
Yes, there is.
I have an entire book that is devoted to just players, right? So you're at your player's handbook. This is everything that your players need to know to play Dungeons and Dragons. We have our monster manual, which is all just monsters. This is all of our adversaries, as you like to call them, monsters. These are the bad guys.
Not all adversaries are monsters,
we have
Richard.
A book full of monsters. And then we have our Dungeon Master's Guide, which is everything you need as a Dungeon Master to fuel your adventure. Mm-hmm. So yes, when I reference Dungeons and Dragons books, I'm talking about the collection as it is, because it's basically a core set. Yes, you can buy them separately. No, you can't. You have to buy all 3 of them. Buy all 3 of them. You need them. They're good books.
So 3 books. How much are these books?
It's relative.
Is it relative? You're right. It is relative. It's a conversation. It is relative. How much are these books each?
They're $50 a piece.
And you have to buy all 3?
$50 a piece.
That's what, $150
I would say
USD?
you have to buy every single book because they're good.
So we're talking $150.
$150, yes.
Meanwhile,
yes. Well,
$60.
Well,
no. You said yourself you need all 3. So $60 in the case of Daggerheart gets you the nice, all-encompassing book, core rule book, with everything you need, including a bunch of domain cards, ancestry cards, etc. Wow, what a deal!
Let me walk it back just a little bit.
Yeah,
so I say yes,
walk.
as a game master, yes, you have to buy all 3 books.
Sure.
As a player, you don't need the monster manual. You don't need the Dungeon Master's Guide.
Shouldn't everyone try being a game master once?
You need the player's handbook. No, some people aren't made for that.
How do they know unless they try?
Some people aren't built.
But Richard, you can certainly
try. Be game masters. Some people are built to be players. And in that case, they only need the player's handbook, and which means they only have to invest $50 to get into it.
How many cards come with that?
If they do decide that they want to jump in, they can then expand their collection a little bit and get into the other ones. But as far as a game master is considered, I do think a game master is required to get all 3 of these books, because you're going to want to read some of the stuff that's in the player's side of things.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
you would need to.
Yeah.
Wow. So for the same price, you could get the Daggerheart limited edition with the dice and the the fancy gold foil cards and the cool collector's box and the fish tokens that everybody needs.
Everybody already has dice.
And the GM screen.
You don't actually
and the
need...
GM screen, Richard.
You don't need those
Same
tokens
price.
for this game.
Yeah, you're right. You don't need them.
You don't have to have tokens for Dungeons & Dragons.
So for just 60, you could have everything you'd ever need.
Now, one of my favorite things about Dungeons & Dragons here is how much is actually contained in these books.
Yeah.
When you come down to the player's handbook, and not just rulings, examples of play. My favorite thing that they've done with this revision to the rulebook is really jump right off and give you whole pages and pages and pages of examples of play, like how things work out, different scenarios, how to handle different scenarios as a player, how to handle different scenarios as a game master, all that flowchart set up. Everything is just beautifully written.
Mm-hmm.
I really, really like that nothing is left to like you to try and figure out on your own. Like if you want a ruling for it, it's in here. If you want to see a play, how it works, like the example of how it's used, it's in here. That right there, I think, is way, way ahead of what we're seeing in the Daggerheart book.
The Daggerheart book also, especially when you get to the GM side, has lots of examples of play and showing you how things work. Something else I like when you're talking about creating characters and things are all the examples of what your character can look like. It's not just one that they're kind of locking you down into. And obviously you can skin things in tabletop games, look however you want. But I appreciate that Daggerheart really embraces that by not only showing you what their like final design for one would be, but just a ton of optional variants that they, thought of also along the way. And that gets the gears turning that you can really just come up with anything you like and anything's acceptable.
There's plenty of kinds of elves in here.
Yeah, there are different kinds of elves. In fact, they actually consolidated some elves from previous editions.
They were superfluous. They had to kind of get them together.
Dwarves, things, they just kind of squished in and got rid of options from the previous edition. That's fine, right? That's what you wanted.
Yeah.
Less options.
No, there's also a ton more artwork in this book.
There's a lot of artwork.
I think there's a lot of artwork in this, and that really expands out when you get to the monster manual, something that I found very lacking in Daggerheart artwork department.
Yeah.
There is a ton of artwork in here. Every single monster in the monster manual has an accompanying piece of artwork that goes along with it. Every piece.
Yes, that's true.
Has one.
It is so much easier, I assume, to make artwork for everything when how much of it's AI generated?
None of it is AI generated.
How can we be sure?
This is all
They've done it before.
That is a thing of the past.
Is it a thing of the very recent past?
Doesn't exist.
You know what Daggerheart does with its adversaries? It has fantastic, amazing art for the ones that they
one of them.
Yeah,
for the one
for each page. But the ones that they don't go out of their way, it's because everything is meant to be reskinned, and they don't want to, much like the the different ancestry and stuff, they don't want to lock you in to the aesthetics of one design. They know that you're going to take this and you're going to build it up with your imagination to look like anything, and it's brilliant.
I hope you have a good imagination.
If you're playing a game that is adult imagination, the game, yes, it's time to flex those the brain muscles, kids. But thank goodness those you're putting those NVIDIA graphic cards to work to come up with this fancy art in your book.
No, it's not just the monsters. There's the artwork for this entire thing is insane. Like, we're not talking about like black and white maps. We're talking about like full color, like full page. Some of them are taking up multiple pages. Like amazing artwork throughout this entire book. When you get to backgrounds, like really, really takes you in as far as like being able to envision your character and where it's going to be. When you go into the the Dungeon Master's Guide, like all the artwork there, I think some of my favorite pieces are ones that are depicting artwork of players actually playing around a table.
Yeah, it's cute.
Yeah, and they actually have a lot of different artists involved, so many different art styles too, which is the other thing I like about the art throughout these books, is it's not just chained down to one specific art style. It runs the gamut, everything from like full ultra realistic to kind of cartoony stuff, to even chibi stuff when you get to the little baby monsters in the Monster Manual.
Yeah, yeah. I do like the chibi section. You got me there.
Yeah.
Everything else. I mean, hey guys, this is what playing with your friends around a table could look like.
Yes.
If they could all afford all these books.
You know what's free? D&D Beyond.
You know what else is free? The Quick
And
Start
it's
Adventure
never been
on
easier.
Daggerheart.com. I've heard
Been easier.
that ever since they stopped sponsoring Acquisitions Incorporated, that it's never been harder. Because since Dungeons and Dragons WotC proper purchased D&D Beyond, that the service has become cluttered and a garbage fire, and is just getting extremely hard to navigate. And people are getting lost in the sauce at the way they mixed 5th edition previous and current edition.
No, it's just marked as legacy. If you see something that's marked as legacy, it's not relevant to your current edition of the game. And that's the cool thing, is that you don't even have to play this edition if you don't want to. All the previous editions are existent. They're all there
all
under the legacy terms. Not all of them, but
all
most of it's
you
there.
mean the last
under,
5th edition?
Under legacy.
Other 5th edition.
Under legacy. And all that stuff is backwards compatible. So you can take all those modules.
Allegedly
and you
backwards compatible
you can
without
use
any
those
issue.
modules in here. We're currently doing it right now. We're playing Curse of
and we've
Strahd.
had no problems.
And we've had no problems. We haven't had any problems. Everything has been 100%.
Yeah,
smooth.
enemy scaling has been great.
Nah, it's been fine.
It's been totally fine. Yeah, I mean, I would argue, you know, that the new edition of 5th edition is worse in some ways, better in other ways. It is definitely not better across the board.
Great. I think that this refresh was exactly what Dungeons and Dragons
You don't
needed.
think that some amazing talent like Chris Perkins, Jeremy Crawford were put under the gun to make more money and get a refresh, even though the game didn't need it because it was already selling so well? And then maybe that part of the reason they were so stressed creatively and burnt out that they left the company after release was because of this edition? Maybe they went somewhere better with greener pastures and brighter horizons. Oh, look. Hi, Daggerheart. Can't wait to see what they come up with now that their creative freedoms have been reestablished.
I think Dungeons and Dragons was begging for a refresh.
I can't wait till we get one Daggerheart.
I think it was begging for a refresh.
Really begging for a refresh.
I think it was. It's been so long in between editions, and I think that things are a lot cleaner. I think that things are a lot more streamlined.
Why didn't they just rip the Band-Aid then and make a new edition?
They did.
No.
They just didn't keep the
They
name.
barely kept. They did. It's just 5th edition.
Well, no, it was supposed to be
We just have to call it 2024 revision of 5th edition.
Okay, if there's one negative about the new edition, it's the naming nomenclature.
It's 1 D&D.
They should have just called it 1 D&D. I agree, and it should just be the new edition of D&D, and they should have just kept it like that. But they had to appease the masses. Everybody was upset with the name, and they had to change it. They were upset with other things that were related to the name.
That was the issue? That's why they were mad?
No, it was
they
the
were
OGL.
mad at the name. I forgot. I was thinking it was like OGL, SRD stuff, but no, it was the name.
I'm just
You're
saying.
right.
The name probably could be better than whatever it is now, that 14 paragraph long 5th edition, whatever. 1 D&D, that's what it's always going to be in my heart. It's 1 D&D where we're at right now. That's where it's going to be for me.
I do like their font. The font. Yeah, the font they use for the player's handbook. What? It's a good point. The font they use on the book that Wizard owns is just really good. It's a good font. I recognize that font from anywhere.
Overall, I do think that this refresh was needed. I think it was needed.
Yeah.
I think where D&D was, it was a little bit stagnant. Do I think they could have used a little bit more time to cook? Probably. But
Interesting.
I think what they have here is a really solid core edition that I don't think, if I was new coming to Dungeons and Dragons, I would be looking at any previous editions. I think that this right here is right now the definitive, what I would refer to as the definitive edition of Dungeons and Dragons. And if I was a newcomer coming into it, this is what I would be looking at. I wouldn't be looking at any previous editions of Dungeons and Dragons.
I mean, that makes sense because you would assume anything else coming out in the future, at least until the next edition, will be based on this.
Of course.
So, I mean, if you're future proofing, yeah, of course, this is what you're going to look for. However, I would make a coffee bet for sure that we had, 10 years between 5th edition and 5th edition? I bet it's less time before we get the next edition.
You think so?
Yes. Because this feels like a half-baked attempt that didn't sell nearly as well as they expected it to. And it pushed designers away. Things are on fire, and they're going to have to course correct. And I think they will attempt to course correct.
I don't think I would describe this as half-baked. I think this is pretty well baked.
You think it's not raw in the middle?
I don't think it's raw in the middle.
There's absolutely some
I don't
brownie
think
coming up
it's
on that
raw
fork.
in the middle. I think overall this did some really good things across the board for a lot of the classes that need refreshing. I think that the only thing that I would say lacking would be some of the more interesting aspects from some of the expansions that came along that have disappeared. But they are coming back, right? Because those are things that were things were getting junky towards the end. We had like 14 different books, and you had to take classes from this one, subclasses from this one, trying to get it all together into one thing to make it. Don't
forget, those haven't gone away. They're still backwards compatible.
Yes, but I think we're getting refreshes to those, and I think that would be the only
resell us all those things.
That would be the only thing that I would say is lacking, is that we've got some variety has been cut away to make room for further expansions and to make everything fit, because we have a lot of data going between these 3 books. There's a lot of information here. There is no gray area here for ruling, which is great. If you need a rule for something, it exists in one of these 3 books. If you want a rule for chasing somebody through a market square, it's in here. Everything is in here. Traveling, like getting from point A to point B and not having, just, oh, what are we going to do for this whole thing? And just being able to like, oh, you get there. No, I want to know what happened in between point A and point B. The rules are in here.
Oh, they're there.
They're great rules for traveling, for coming up with random encounters or things that could happen or what your players can be doing on downtime. All that stuff now is in here. There's no gray area for any of that. There is a situation for everything. And overall, they handle it all quite admirably. I think that everything in here is where it needs to be now versus having different rulings throughout bunches of different books and trying to come up with all that stuff together, to have all of your players have everything at the table. Used to be a lot more than $150 because you were looking at buying all these different expansion books, these different modules and everything like that. And now you got 3 core rule books as your jumping off point that gets you everything that you need for playing a TTRPG. And it is a system that is, at this point, pretty well balanced. Like, everything just works. All the monsters that are in here are all finely tuned to just not be, complete wipeouts for your parties. You can, run through and pull out what you need. Finding inspiration in this book, comparative to Daggerheart, I think is way easier. Like, I'm looking through the monster manual and I can just visually see all these different creatures, right? I can see what they are and then immediately start plucking them out and making encounters. If I don't have that, I can look at the, the appendix that's for the monster manual that tells me all the different biomes that these things could be in. So if I just have an idea that I want to do something snowy, I can go look in snowy and then find everything that's going to be in that region, that could be in that region, that I can just pluck directly out of the monster manual and use right in my thing.
Yeah.
Which is how I build stuff.
Of course.
So everything works really well for that. It's so easy to just look at it and immediately get inspiration on how you're going to use stuff because you can see it. It's visual. It's right there. I'm a visual person.
Yeah. I also love that in the Daggerheart book, it's super easy to come up with encounters and scenarios and things, thanks to an entire section devoted to frameworks, which are a cool thing we have, where instead of charging us extra money for, what would be a module of sorts or something in your guys' books, we have these cool setups where it does a bunch of lore and world building. It tells you the type of creatures you might encounter there. I mean, we're even talking colossi, where it breaks down, instead of attacking this monster as a whole because it's too big, treat each body part as its own adversary, which is amazing. And you're talking about giving you like that tingle in your brain that inspires you for a campaign. I mean, we've got like Cowboys and Colossi, right? Over here we got Horizon Zero, early in the morning. And then we got what is it? Beast Feast, Delicious in Dungeon. It's amazing. Like
That's somebody else's idea.
All these things
Just saying.
that you can just open up the book and be like, I can come up with an entire campaign just from the little bit of world building they did here at the beginning, and then the different advice they give you on running adversaries or political houses with, stuff like that. All from just one little chapter of the book. They give you all this stuff free of charge. It's just there.
I agree. The same thing goes for here. I've got frameworks.
Yeah.
We've got Greyhawk.
You got Greyhawk.
That's a framework.
You got a framework.
That's an amazing framework.
You know where
it's
I
very fleshed out.
Yeah. You know where I really want to play? Old Greyhawk from first edition. Can't wait.
Just because it's old doesn't mean that it's not
It's just
good.
your typical...
How old is Lord of the Rings?
Typical fantasy. Oh, if I want to make a framework for Middle Earth, I guarantee that's probably already online. I could make my own pretty easily. Different mechanics for carrying the ring and things like that. Easy. And they've got advice on how to do that. And like build out these different frameworks. And you can follow these examples.
Yeah, I agree.
Greyhawk
is a great framework. Frameworks are great. I've got those too. So.
Do you? Do any of
and
yours,
it was included in the core rulebook.
And does that leave behind the typical notion of basic fantasy?
Not Greyhawk specifically, but there are rules in here where they talk about being able to do things. You talked about computers. There's computer use in here. There's actual skill checks in here for using a computer.
You finally got computers.
I got rules for using chainsaws in here. You want to be fantasy? We can just make lumberjacks if you want to. It doesn't have to be Greyhawk and fantasy. We can have a Fire Tower-esque game where we're just role playing some people in watch towers, and a fire breaks off in the distance, and you gotta grab your chainsaw to cut down some wood to keep the fire from spreading over to your tower. We got that.
Real talk, we have to do the lumberjack versus beavers one shot.
Yeah, we could do that. I have the rules on how to use chainsaws in here and these stats for a chainsaw.
Thank God. After 50 years they finally figured it out. They finally figured out chainsaws, and it's about time that they get out of their own collective booties.
And you can't tell me that when you look at the Bard artwork on here that's not Taylor Swift.
It is Taylor Swift.
That's Taylor Swift.
And you know what? They didn't cut her check. Where's the 2024 revision of 5th edition Taylor's
because
edition?
They can't afford Taylor Swift. Okay. That's a different problem entirely.
Yeah, they had to generate a different Taylor Swift, probably, allegedly. Yeah, I'm sorry,
but yeah, no, frameworks are cool, and like I said, yeah, they do exist in my books too, which is fine.
Imagine if there was multiple instances of your Taylor Swift character, so you knew. It's nice to be able to go to your friendly local game store. If you can find it, mind you.
I was going to say, I can go get this in any of my game stores.
You can find that
I can find this
anywhere.
at Barnes and Nobles, any bookstore, friendly local game stores.
They're
I can order
just
this
sitting there.
online.
They're having trouble moving them, aren't they?
I mean, it's just there.
I can't even order mine online.
If you want to do it digitally, you can also do that. It's available completely
Thanks
digitally.
Thanks to Demiplane?
You can buy
It's never been easier.
All the books on D&D Beyond.
I forgot. So many books.
And then you have D&D Beyond there to run side saddle to the books to make everything work.
Yeah. I've never found such a nice, complete, tabletop game all in one thing. It's so accepting of every culture, every gender and sexuality. Everyone's welcome here in the world of Daggerheart. And knowing that it's backed by such a force like Critical Role, I think that's gonna, reign to the future. Like we're gonna get a lot of this game going forward.
Are you saying that Critical Role doesn't back Dungeons and Dragons? They've been playing it for years.
I think they've had.
I watched them play it last week.
I think they've definitely had some feelings about Dungeons and Dragons. And
I watched them play it last week.
Out.
I haven't seen Dimension 20 talking about Daggerheart at all.
Yeah.
They're still playing Dungeons and Dragons pretty regularly as well. So, I mean, that's a pretty big powerhouse.
Yeah, and they have to tweak it so much to get any fun out of it.
No, they just know that the system can be tweaked.
They've already run out. The fun's gone. They had to add in their own
They know how easily the system can be tweaked. I think that's one of my that's really is the main reason why I like Dungeons and Dragons so much, is that the system is so robust. There is, I mean, it's literally all right there. We've tried out a bunch of different systems, and there's a reason why for the last few years we've been playing nothing but Dungeons and Dragons. We have all these other systems to us. We have access to all these other systems. We play, Monster of the Week. We do little one-shots here and there.
So good. You need to finish it.
We've done Dreams and Machines. We've done all that stuff, but we always come back to Dungeons and Dragons.
We have Dreams and Machines at home now.
Because everything... It just works. Everybody at the table knows the systems because they, as crunchy as they can be, they are so easy to grasp. It is a very straightforward system. It's not bogged down with a bajillion different skill sets like something like Call of Cthulhu. That there's like 100 skills in that game.
You picked a good one to compare it to. I was like, excuse me, sir? There's a lot of skills.
There's a lot of skills in Call of Cthulhu.
That's a different step up.
Yeah.
There's always layers to like complexity for sure.
Yes. And this game is
levels.
This game has it's done that for years. It's always been that game that is not as like super number crunchy as some of the higher end stuff, or even some of the older editions that like purists and Dungeons and Dragons that play that are still dealing with THAC0 and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's got that certain level of complexity to where you have not only the game's levels 1 through 20, but then you have epic levels that you can delve into. You can run campaigns in this that last decades long, and have player progression that just keeps going.
Brennan Lee Mulligan just finished up a 14-year-old game.
Yeah, I mean it's because this
our associate from work
is
would
so robust.
Have unalived himself.
Oh yeah, no, he would have hated it. He's already getting tired of Strahd, and it's only been a couple of years. But yeah, no, the ease of use of this system, as well as the depth of this system, is the reason why it is the juggernaut that it is, and why nobody's been able to dethrone it yet. It's still reigning number one. And if you look at other games, like like stuff that's been out for a while, like even Pathfinder has a hard time keeping up, even though they are releasing so much stuff.
They're doing everything right.
They're doing everything right. However, when you go out and you ask anybody about tabletop role-playing games, what's the first game they're going to say? Dungeons and Dragons.
That Stranger Things game?
What are they going to know about? Dungeons and Dragons.
Demogorgon.
And there's a reason for that. There's a reason why it's the top dog and why it has been the top dog for so long, is because there's really not anything else out there that comes to it on its own level. There are other games for sure, that try, that really do try, but it's not, an apples to apples comparison.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to compare yourself to something like this that is spread across over 3 core rule books, because there's a ruling for everything. There's a scenario for everything. Anything that you want to do, anything that you want to be, is here in this book. One of these books.
And then Daggerheart came along and they showed us all that we didn't need 3 books. We didn't need a ruling for every single thing.
Allegedly.
Things could be simpler. With Daggerheart, it's never been easier. And, with Hasbro just constantly trying to bring Dungeons & Dragons down and succeeding in sometimes, and Daggerheart just taking advantage of this moment, I'm so excited it's here to rescue us. I know we've been playing Dungeons & Dragons for, a couple years now. What are we playing next after we finish our Strahd game?
You said Monster of the Week, right?
We're gonna. You're running a game of Daggerheart for us. You were excited about it.
I gotta give it its fair shake.
Yeah, and then after that, we're gonna run some more Daggerheart.
I gotta give it its fair shake. And
we're gonna probably run some more Daggerheart, and then after we're done, fully just burying Dungeons and Dragons in a wooden chest into the yard, right above like the city pipes. We'll just keep playing Daggerheart, and then we're gonna buy more cards. Because we want more cards, we want disposable cards. This system right here, it's everything we need. And they did it all in one book and a collection of cards.
So it really
Speaking
hasn't
of
had
art,
the time.
Wow, every card has its own individual art.
That's cards,
It's amazing.
The cards that are going to get dirty and get lost and get ripped.
No, that's what the sleeves are for.
They're going to get messed up at the table. I think that the main problem with Daggerheart right now versus Dungeons and Dragons is it's an unknown.
Unknown?
We don't really know how it's going to actually stack up against this when it comes to the long road.
I know right now, Short Road, it's got a lot of hype. And like I said, we literally can't find it on shelves in most cases. You were lucky to find one.
Yeah, I can buy this everywhere.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure I can buy this at 7-Eleven.
Yeah. Because no one wants it.
Right up there next to those magazines. They got them there on the bottom shelf.
Yeah.
Next to Edge magazine.
You find like you found some you found some D&D at Ollie's for like $5.
I did,
right?
yes, I did find D&D at Ollie's. Yeah.
So I'm really excited to see how this shakes out in the long run. I know it's going to take over our table. I want to know how many other out there. Are you going? This is a very specific question. Are you switching from Dungeons and Dragons to Daggerheart? This isn't a hey, Daggerheart looks cool, I'm about to start playing Daggerheart. This is specifically D&D to Daggerheart. Let me know in the comments.
I think that's going to be a really tough one for a lot of people, making the switch from this game to that game. And the main reason is because long-term games. There's a lot of people out here that are currently playing this. Like, we're playing Strahd in here, and we're not going to drop Strahd to just start playing Daggerheart.
We would have, though, if we were farther than like 2 sessions away from the end.
I'm just saying, though, that like a lot of people are playing long-term games, and just dropping a long-term game is not going to be a one-to-one switch, because there's a lot of rules in here that are very specific to ways of play that are not conducive to what you get out of Daggerheart. So people that are playing, a game that's been going for the last 4 years, they have a character that they have grown with for the last 4 years. That has a lot of abilities and a lot of items and stuff like that just are not applicable.
But are those players, have they even switched from 5e to 5e, or are they still playing 5e?
I think that a lot of them, I think a lot of people haven't made the switch, but I do think there are a lot more tables than people realize have made the switch.
Yeah.
Yes, and I think that becomes really apparent when you look at the D&D Beyond usage. So people that are using D&D Beyond are mostly using new content stuff, and I think that's because a lot of people did make that switch over, and I think people went ahead and moved over because of the content that's in these books, because a lot of classes became relevant again with this new edition, or became way more in-depth than they were before with this new edition. And even the ones that haven't, I think those were easily kind of just moved over. Like, I've been playtesting a class that's not even in this book, that is, pretty well balanced. It's just, little tiny tweaks here and there to make it actually function.
Yeah.
But that's not even in relative from old edition to new edition Dungeons and Dragons. That's just Dungeons and Dragons in general.
It does say a lot to me, though, that with this new book, you didn't even want to play a class in the book. You went out of your way to find a playtest class from another podcast.
That was peer pressure from you.
Are playing their class instead.
That was peer pressure from
because
you.
would
I can go back to the exact text where you were all like, man, it's a shame that you're playing this character and not playing this.
Dare you.
Insert 3 links for you to read this. Because I can make this happen, wink, wink.
It's interesting to me that you bring this up, actually, now you bring that up, that you had to go out of your way to find playtest material to play a witch in D&D. You know what Daggerheart's got already?
Playtest material.
If you go to the Void, official.
It's playtest material.
Official material.
Official playtest
to play
material.
The Witch. This wasn't a brainchild of Erika Ishii and Brennan Lee Mulligan for Dungeons and Dragons. You can't find.
It is also leagues different.
Yeah.
The Witch on the Void doesn't even touch Brennan and Erika's Witch.
The overtuned, supposed to be powerful for the podcast Witch. Sure, I get it.
No, as far as I'm just talking about the lore and thematics of the Witch that has been created for Worlds Beyond Number, is a completely different beast than the Witch that is in the Void playtest for Daggerheart right now.
Yeah.
And that's because of the mechanics, the mechanics that the book accounts for. There's a bunch of stuff that the Witch that Worlds Beyond Number can do that is possible because of the rule set that Dungeons and Dragons has laid out in front of the player to allow that versatility of builds, which I think is a huge thing for a lot of people, which is why I say a lot of people are not going to leave their long-term campaign for something like Daggerheart, or are not going to try and convert their long-term campaign over to Daggerheart, because the only option for a lot of those is, shedding stuff that makes their character for making a jump over to Daggerheart, because the rules in Daggerheart just don't support it. They just don't hold it up the same way that Dungeons and Dragons does.
So part 2 of my question to the commenters and the listeners out there. If you are in a long-term campaign, are you switching over now, or do you plan on switching over when you're done? Still, this is just to people who are currently playing Dungeons & Dragons and are going to switch to Daggerheart. Is it a rip the Band-Aid moment, or do you plan on doing it later? Or are you going to stick with Dungeons & Dragons? I would like to know that, please.
Yeah. If I had to guess, a lot of people are going to use Daggerheart as a fun distraction amidst their mainstay campaigns for Dungeons
and I would like
Dragons.
to know that. We have plenty of systems like that. Us playing Dune, or us playing Dreams of Machines, or One More Quest, Cthulhu, Monsters of the Week. We have systems and games. Morkborg. Lots of games that we play in between sessions of Dungeons and Dragons. Part of the reason Strahd took so long. But I believe, and I believe you believe, that Daggerheart is the future of our game nights.
Of our game nights on our table?
Yes.
I think so. But our game table is also very specific.
Yeah.
I think if our game table was slightly different, it would be a different discussion. Because Daggerheart does not support the number crunch in the metagame the same way.
Mm-hmm. Not at all.
Yeah.
I can tell you, listeners out there, that Daggerheart is my game of choice between the two of these. However, if you're here for the crunching and you want more of the math and you want to power build and stuff, like have that as an option, things like that, Dungeons & Dragons is definitely more your calling. However, you also might want to look into Pathfinder or Starfinder at that, because that might actually be even more of your calling.
It's interesting because I do think that I prefer, having played Starfinder recently, having played Pathfinder a very long time ago. So I really can't say much about Pathfinder in general. But as far as like Starfinder versus Dungeons and Dragons, in Dungeons and Dragons current iteration, I think is better than Starfinder is right now.
That's coming with we played Starfinder.
We played Starfinder one time.
Yes.
And
it was very fun.
It was very fun. I'm not discounting that. But looking at the rulings of Starfinder and reading it and reading the materials that I have read for Starfinder and Pathfinder, Dungeons and Dragons is just easier. It's way more intuitive, I think.
There is a note. I want to put a little pin on one thing and immediately, discuss it. So I'm popping the bubble.
Not a pin.
We played first edition Starfinder.
Yes, that's exactly what I was going to say.
So there is an
updated version.
Yes. So we did play recently, but it was shortly before the most recent version of Starfinder.
And I have not read any of the more recent versions.
Right.
I would suspect that it won't change my feeling much.
You do like the sci-fi.
Having read those books. As much as I love sci-fi, as much as I do like sci-fi, I have a feeling that it wouldn't change much.
Okay.
Because even looking at other books like One More Quest and everything like that, which I absolutely love, would I replace Dungeons and Dragons with One More Quest? No, I wouldn't. And that's because Dungeons and Dragons, as it sits, has a lot of history, yes, but it's also had a lot of time to grow into itself and to become what it is right now. And I know that a lot of people weren't super hype with the 3 books and weren't like very happy with how they all came. But if you go back and you listen to our videos that we did on this when we talked about it, my stance hasn't changed. I was very impressed with these core rule books as a whole. If you watch back in that playlist, and you can hear me talk about all 3 books.
Keep in mind, Watsy gave him a book and a swag bag.
Stop it. And then I went out and bought collector's editions.
Yeah, and then he went out and gave them more money.
I went and bought collector's editions. So yes, they did give me a fancy player's handbook that I got signed by some really cool people.
Yeah.
Yes, that was very cool. Got to hang out with some people. But yes,
eat food. Yeah, look at this guy.
I did buy collector's
YouTuber
editions
over here.
and I bought them knowing that I really loved what was in these core rule books. And I didn't have a lot of negatives to say about these rule books, if I remember correctly. I was more on the very positive side of things, which is against
You've been very excited.
Which is against a lot of mainstream YouTubers. A lot of people, weren't as hype for these books or as excited about these books as I was.
Yeah.
I don't have a lot of negatives when it comes to these 3 books. They were a delight to read. I read through them all in pretty much one shot. Every single book, like sat down and read through like all of them.
An actual machine.
When I read through the player's handbook, I did it in one evening, sitting on the porch of a Airbnb in Daytona Beach.
I remember getting a text of like a cup of coffee in the player's handbook, and then a few hours later, and done.
Yeah, and it was delightful, start to finish. This book was amazing to read through. It everything was well laid out. Even when things started to drag with, like numbers and graphs and stuff like that, it picks right back up because you're looking at amazing artwork throughout or reading a cool flow chart that explains and puts into practical use what you just read. And it was like that with every single one of these books. They were easy to reference. There was never really a gray area. I never found a place where I felt like it wasn't explained well enough or wasn't explained at all. And that's a big thing. And I was very, very pleased with this core set.
I'm glad someone was.
It was me. Okay? Me. I'm the problem.
Yeah, maybe they'll get it right next time. Give a few years.
I don't think they need to. I would be very surprised if they were to announce like a new edition coming anytime soon.
What do you think it looks like? 5.5.6 or whatever they call it. Do you think they're going to lean heavier into role play? Do you think it's just going to be another light brushing, or do you think they're going to go more mechanic heavy?
I think that they're going to continue to do what they've done, which is skirt that lines between mechanic and role play, which is exactly what these 3 books do. Well,
will that be enough of a change to warrant another edition?
That's why I don't think we're going to get another edition anytime soon. I think we're going to ride with this one for a while. I think this is what we needed, and I think that this is good enough to ride us through for a bit. That's why I think we're going to get additions to this, just like we got additions to the previous edition, added on classes and subclasses and
supplementary
more
books,
modules, supplementary books, which is kind of the natural progression of things, getting more supplementary books. But I don't know what I would change about these 3 books because they are that comprehensive in their current state. Like, I don't know how we improve upon this.
I think that's why I hope they do make another edition, is I want to see what is not comfortable to me. I want to see a new refresh, right? So I think that's part of the reason why this refresh, this decade, in the making refresh, felt so unnecessary to me, because at the end of the day, it is still 5th edition. There are some changes like your weapon masteries and stuff like that change up how martial characters play. And there's some tweaks to certain spells and there are things like that. But they have been doing erratas and sourcebook, additional sourcebooks and stuff over the decade that all added up to what 5th edition was. They could have come out and said, hey, here is a change for martial characters. Here's a new way you can handle weapons. And that could have been its own like sourcebook, like the martial change or whatever. But instead they decided to, try to take a bunch of sourcebooks and things they've been putting out and kind of like consolidate everything into this new refresh. I can't bring myself to really think of it as a new edition. It is still 5e. And that's where I'm wondering, okay, if 3.5 and everything. Like everyone has a favorite edition. And I think that's because the rules have always changed enough in between editions that they felt different and people strongly prefer one to another. And if you play 5th, it's still basically the same game, and they obviously went for that on purpose by calling this backwards compatible. I want a 6E, and I want to see what the new creatives stepping up through Wizards of the Coast come up with. Whether that be a swing one way or the other. And maybe we won't like it as much. Maybe we say we prefer 5th edition. And we join countless other players of Dungeons & Dragons throughout the decades with a favorite edition that we ride or die for. But I would like to see growth and change from this game. Different takes.
I think that's what you literally just hit what I was about to say, is different takes. Because I think that while it is sharing a name with the previous edition, this is at its heart the purest form, I feel, of Dungeons and Dragons right now. And there's a reason why it is the book that is across the table from that book right now. Because this is the king. This is what it is to beat for anything. For any new game that comes out right now, this is what you are comparing it to.
D&D is synonymous with tabletop role-playing
because
games.
When you are comparing what the killer is for TTRPGs, you're not seeing videos where people are talking about the Monster of the Week killer that's getting released or the Morkborg killer that's being released. And it's always the Dungeons and Dragons killer.
And I'll give you a temporary easy one. And I think this will be a great metric in 5 to 10 years. This ampersand on the cover of your Dungeons & Dragons book carries so much weight.
Yes.
Everyone knows what that means. You can have a shirt with that symbol on, and people are like, you're a nerd. This symbol for Daggerheart means nothing to anyone who doesn't play Daggerheart.
Yeah.
This symbol means nothing. Yet so far. But yeah, I think that's very telling though, is that this right here is the metric. This is the other side of the coin that's being used for anything that's being released, because this is what you need to beat. This is what is there to beat. And I think this is Dungeons & Dragons in its purest form. If they were to do anything after this right now, other than just supplemental materials, it would not be this game. It would not be a 6E, right? It wouldn't be a watered down version of this that's more rules light. It wouldn't be a crunchier version of this that is more rules heavy and less narrative. I think it would be a completely different game entirely that shares a name somewhat. So it would be something like D&D Next. Oh, they already did that.
Like something along those lines. Like, it would be Dungeons and Dragons.
You're going to get a 6E.
But I don't think 6E is going to work, because I don't think it's going to be 6E. And the reason why I don't think it's going to be 6E is because I don't think it's going to be just an iteration on this. It's going to be a wildly new take on Dungeons and Dragons and role playing as a whole. What is that? I don't know yet, because I haven't seen the commercial for the product that I didn't need and I didn't know I needed yet. But I don't think it'll just be an iteration of what they've been doing, because like I said, I think right now we're at our purest form in this version of 5e that we're in. I think this right here is very good, very polished, very playable. Does not need another edition, in my humble opinion, right now. Doesn't need a new edition. So if they did release something, it wouldn't be a new edition of Dungeons and Dragons. It would be a new take on Dungeons and Dragons. A whole new way to play that is in a class of its own and not just an iteration of what we've already seen.
Yeah. And it'll be called 6E. Because like you said, the different editions have not been the same game.
Yes and no.
And 6E.
Yes and no. And this is coming from somebody who has been playing since 2nd edition.
From a marketing standpoint, 6E sells. I don't know if I do wish they called this 1D&D and that they stuck to the original plan. They didn't. I don't know if they're going to go back to something similar.
No. And like I said, this is coming from somebody who has played since 2nd edition, right? 2nd edition to now. It's all the same game. It's all the same game. You can like 2nd edition. You can be a 3.5 purist. I was a 3.5 purist for a very long time. 3.5 was amazing. 3rd edition was a great time to be in Dungeons and Dragons. We got some of the, in my opinion, some of my favorite books ever were released during 3rd edition. Just chef's kiss. It was a great time to be alive and playing Dungeons and Dragons. There were some questionable things here and there, but overall, at its core, at its heart, it was a really great game. But from 2nd edition, all that's what I'm playing right now, I've always been playing Dungeons and Dragons, and it's always been Dungeons and Dragons, same bat time, same bat channel, with just a different number in the beginning, slight change in mechanics, but it's all been Dungeons and Dragons. And that's what I'm trying to get at here, is that right now we're at our purest form of it. You can say that they're different games. They're not different games. 3.5 and 5e, they're not different games. They're the same game with slightly different flavor packets. It's just a different flavor of ramen noodles.
I'll say mild or spicy.
And I think that when we get past this, it's not going to be ramen noodles anymore. We're going into like cup noodle territories, right? We're going outside of the little packet with just a little flavory thingy. No, we're going to have like a whole layer of built-in stuff. This is like a whole new experience. I think it's going to be a completely different game, in a real sense. It's not just going to be flavoring from additions, which
There's
is what we've been
dried corn on there.
Yeah, there's going to be some dried corn, real meat,
seaweed,
those little patties that are like shaped like a little smiley face, and they just make you happy before you eat them. I think it's going to be a drastically different game. That's what I think we'll see. But I don't think we're going to see that for a while, because I don't think we need to. Because right now, I think this is kind of the bee's knees when it comes to tabletop RPGs, and there's a reason why we got to compare this game to this, is because it's the king, baby.
I think you gotta stop focusing on these bee's knees and look over at these. This is the purest form of Daggerheart that has ever existed, Richard.
It's the only form.
And it's the only form we need. They did it. First try.
We'll see.
I can't wait for more.
We'll see. And time will tell how it actually performs. It's got a lot to live up to.
Give it 10 years.
It's got a lot to live up to.
Dagger's
right
going to
now.
mean something.
It's got a lot. Big shoes to fill and a big shadow to step out from behind. She casts a big shadow, Dungeons and Dragons.
Hopefully Chris Perkins and Jeremy Crawford can help.
They're very good people.
I think the team at Daring to Press has already done a pretty good job without him. So they stepped into a good team, if nothing else. Who's left at WotC, by the way?
Right now?
Yeah, name your favorite person there.
We'll talk about that on another episode.
Name your favorite employee.
This isn't about the employees
right
of WotC right now. This isn't about Hasbro as a parent company. This isn't about that. This is about this book.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
This book.
And with that, everyone, I hope you've enjoyed this episode of True Strike. This is more combative than our normal ones. Richard and I are still friends, I believe. I haven't actually talked to him about this. We might talk after the show if we have any beef there. There's any old grudges coming up. But I hope you enjoyed this regardless. Please let us know what you thought in the comments, which your favorite is between Dungeons & Dragons and Daggerheart, or just in general, what's your favorite tabletop role-playing system? Maybe you have one above either of these two. You probably don't, because it's probably Daggerheart. But hey, if you are listening on any of those areas where you catch a pod, 5 stars is really appreciated. If you're on YouTube, like and subscribe. We are nearly at 1,000 subs, so that would be super duper cool. And if you made it this far into the video, or if you've been listening to us for a very long time, we mentioned when we hit 1,000 subs, we'll be doing another giveaway. When we do giveaways, we don't require subs. We don't require really anything. I think we require like email or something on the service, because we have to contact you somehow. But we don't need you to do anything other than like the bare minimum.
Yeah.
So just keep an eye out whenever we hit 1,000 subs. An episode right around that time. We'll discuss details when we get
We
there.
got to figure out what we're going to give away.
Yeah. So, hey, like I said, you don't have to subscribe, but if you want to help get us there a little sooner, maybe you get something. That sounds like I'm fishing now. See, I'm talking too long.
Yeah, stop talking.
I'm just going to stop talking.
I figured out how we could solve this real quick. I get to hit you with my core set.
Yeah.
You get to hit me with your core set.
And whoever does the least amount of damage.
Whoever does the most amount of damage wins.
All right, let me grab my box for my limited edition really quick. All right. Hey, guys, those lanterns back there, they could have your names up. No, they don't. See, I got to stop talking.
Stop making weird promises. We can't Sharpie everybody's names on the lanterns.
But what
One
if we did?
person's name.
One person's name. If you want your name to be on those lanterns.
Wait, one per lantern. That's 2 people.
Well, there's 4 sides of lantern.
Yeah, but the one on the back you can't see, and neither can you see the
We'll
ones
just
on
have
the
to
sides.
rotate them weekly or something.
Stop.
Guys,
We don't have a name wall that we can do.
do we need? Let us know in the comments if we need to. What is it like? I don't know. Like, do we need to fund a word name wall?
Where are we gonna put it? No,
Right
stop.
there.
Just roll the end thing. Keep going.
I don't know how anymore. I've lost it. Hey guys, if you want to see more Daggerheart content, follow us or whatever. Hey, until then, I've been Tyler,
And I've been Richard.
and we've been
True Strike.
See ya.
Bye.
Hey, adventurers! Thanks again for joining us today. Please be sure to give us a follow on your favorite podcasting platforms and YouTube. If there's any questions you'd like to write into the show, you can hit us up on Threads, Blue Sky, or Instagram. New episodes released every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern. Thank you for listening to True Strike.